Welcome back to the Amazing Grace Range Scale Part 2. I'm Max. This is Scratch to Gigs. If you missed Part 1, there's got to be a button around here somewhere. So here we go. We're working on D major pentatonic. And we started a major scale on the root. And we even saw identical finger patterns on adjacent strings. Those are our finger buttons. So one thing I didn't mention in the last video was that if you have a whole step away from an open string, it's a one button, and that in our brain is going to be in the same place on every string. Because in theory, that interval is the same. So that's where the idea of identical finger patterns on adjacent strings starts to make things easier and easier. You can create these nuggets, and those nuggets, little chunks of 3 notes going across strings, is going to build a pentatonic scale. So we already saw it build a major scale. It so happened that you needed 3 fingers. You needed your 1 button, your 2 button, and your 3 button for those notes. In a pentatonic scale, we actually have chunks that get built up using only 2 fingers. Now, it's a little crafty. I say adjacent strings. You would think that that means only 2, and sometimes it does, but sometimes you have to be a little bit perceptive about where these chunks start and end. So I'm just going to show you what I mean because I don't have the bandwidth this morning to fully flesh out all these ideas. This is intended to be a primer course with a PDF attachment, and so you can follow along, and then in subsequent weeks, let's dive into more of this stuff. Ooh, okay, that sounded like something. Let's figure out what it was. It was actually a pentatonic scale starting on the 5th. But more important to note is that the finger pattern was 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0. And that's what I mean by identical finger patterns across adjacent strings. It so happens that we end up on an open. So we did cross over 3 strings, but the finger pattern remains 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0. Let's continue. Start right here. 0, 1, 3, 0, 1, 3. We have another pattern of identical finger patterns on adjacent strings. So that is also a pentatonic scale starting on the 5th. And those are our little D major pentatonic nuggets in first position on the fiddle. You ought to play with a metronome, y'all. Let's do that with a metronome. 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0, 1, 3, 0, 1, 3, 1, 0, 3, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 2, 1. That was a weird groove, but okay. Here's something I failed to mention until now, is pairing up your playing with something in your brain that is, quote, not playing, but that's easier to think about. And this is called indexing. Indexing kind of puts the label on the file of a whole bunch of content and information that belongs with that event, but that makes really easy to find. So that's why I keep saying finger numbers. When I was a boy, I was learning Suzuki method, and you would write in your finger numbers for the parts. But to start to prioritize that changes your learning to be based in these music theory structures. So it's not just like you have to memorize a laundry list. It's that you can actually generate the sound that you want because you know what nuggets belong in that pentatonic scale. So That was the whole pentatonic scale in D major. You had to jump over some notes that would be in the major scale. But hopefully by now you realize that a 3 is a 3 is a 3. Whether you play a 1 note before it, a 2 note before it, or an open note before it, you want to hear that interval just like your more narrow intervals. A whole step, a major third, a perfect fourth. Okay, now by thinking in intervals, we can start to put together a melody. So now I will play the melody of Amazing Grace, and then we will spend about 1 more minute analyzing what those intervals are. But more important than being able to say the names of the intervals is knowing the range scale. Oh, we never did the range scale, so let's do that. We're on thin ice, but we're going to keep going here. Knowing the order of pitches, so there's that process of elimination. So we already know that it's pentatonic. So by the way, pent means 5, right? 5 tones. There's only going to be 5 pitches in this song. Now, there might be an octave, but that would just be the beginning of the new octave of the scale, and we don't happen to continue higher than that. So although there are 6 actual notes in the song, there are only 5 pitches. So your brain will start to weed through and be able to identify, aha, descending scale, major third, perfect fourth. That's what we're going to hit at the very end of the video. So here we go. Here's the melody. Metronome. And this is in 3, so put your metronome in 3. Oh, man. Rest. Okay, so that was the whole song. Let's look at the range scale. In this case, it's easier than you think. The first note is actually the lowest note of the song. Now, we play the A note. Do we have a B note? Yes. Do we have a C sharp note? Nope, pentatonic. So we play D next. Where do you think this is going? We're going to our identical finger patterns on adjacent strings. 0, 1, 3, 0, 1, 3. Just so happens that Amazing Grace is contained inside 1 octave. That melody is, in essence, a pentatonic scale starting on the 5th. Boom. Okay, it's written in my notes. Great. Let's look at the structure. Okay. I'll do the melody one more time. Now that we know this is the range scale, I'll play the melody. I'll say the numbers of the fingers. You should probably be able, at this stage, to predict what's coming up. If you hear something that matched your prediction, then this buttons idea is working. And when you pick up your own fiddle, you'll be able to hear those intervals as associated with those 2 finger numbers. But more importantly, you'll have this feeling of how far apart those notes are. So here we go. 0, 3, 1, 3, 1. 0, 3, 1, 0. 0, 3, 1, 3, 1. 0, 3. Rest. 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3. 0, 1, 3, 3, 1, 0. 0, 3, we're getting into mine. So I'm very quickly going to just suggest the idea. There are some rests in that melody. During the rests, hear the next nugget of notes, chunk of notes, and see if you can identify what interval that is. So each interval is the distance between two notes. And the very first interval that we play is the widest, from an open to a 3. Now remember from part 1, we start with the idea of a unison. So that's the same sound. If we move the distance of one note, it's actually called a major second. So the distance of two notes is a major third. And so the very first interval of the song is known as the perfect fourth. So when I was learning the interval map, so to speak, how to identify intervals, I should say, it's a common technique to try to identify a song that starts with that interval, and the one that's associated with perfect fourth is "Here Comes the Bride," or in this case, we might as well, I'm going to change my idea now. What's a perfect fourth? It's Amazing Grace. All right, so if you can hear Amazing, well, then you know a perfect fourth. Now here is the more advanced application. And then I really got to go. Look at that. 12 minutes already. Thanks for sticking with me. You can transpose this melody. You could put this melody in a lower octave. So maybe that would be the better place to start. If we are playing this song in D major, that's starting on an A note, D note. Well, we happen to have a lower octave available to us. We might as well use the easy buttons. 1, 0, 2, 0, 2. And now, lo and behold, it's arithmetic, right? Now we're only going to use the lower octave pentatonic finger patterns on adjacent strings. So that would be our 1, 2, 0, 1, 2, 0. We know that that's our range scale for this melody, and let's find out how it sounds in the lower octave. Then we're going to sign off. 2, 0, 2, 1, 0, 2, 1, 1, 0. Dramatic lighting. 2, 0, 2, 1, 0. 2, 0, 2, 0, 2, 0. 1, 2, 0, 0, 2, 1. 1, 0, 2, 0, 2, 1, 0. I felt confident there mostly because of my habit of indexing the pitches of a melody. I was saying the number of the finger and playing at the same time. I forgot to turn on my metronome, darn it, but that would be an even more robust experience. If you're saying the number of the finger, singing the melody, listening to the metronome and grooving along with it so your whole practice session is in rhythm and playing at the same time, you are building a framework or a roadmap for your intonation. And over time, you're going to make mistakes, but that's part of the journey, right? You learned that it's not a major third at the beginning. You learned that the song doesn't start, May. That's not the song. May. And so that experience of assigning finger numbers to the pitches and beginning to learn the architecture of range scales and pentatonic scales and major scales, you're going to feel more confident about what the answer is to the melody that you are trying to learn. So thanks all for watching. Join us next time for Scratch to Gigs, and please bring up your questions, your comments, your concerns, your thoughts, your morale boosters, because Lord knows I need them all. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.